Hello everyone. Welcome to ServiceDesk Plus Masterclass 2022 Season 2 and Episode 2. If you have been present with in our previous seasons, you would have noticed that we focused more on module-related topics, but in this season, we're focusing on functionality-related topics. So this season is about configuring no-code and low-code automations across major ITSM practices using ServiceDesk Plus. I'm Steffi Benjamin here, and I will be your user educator for this session. The agenda for this session is we're going to see how you can configure automations to ensure efficiency. So this should give a versatile nature to your application. So we have a list of automations on my screen like service level agreements, priority metrics, business rules, and the like. Now, Zilker is a fictional use case we use to explain how the various features of Service Plus can be applied in a real-time organization. So, Zilker is a rapidly emerging e-commerce company with dispersed workforce. Now, during the festive season, Zilker would obviously face an increased demand for its services. So, it decided to upgrade its web servers and operating systems to handle the high demand. But while doing it so haphazardly, Zilker suffered a major website outage. Now, as an e commerce company, you can imagine what would be the impact of such an outage. So, Zilker needs to get back its services online as quick as possible. So, Zilker decided to use a ticketing tool. But by depending on a basic ticketing tool, it had to manually put in efforts to manage different ITSM practices. Now, you might be wondering, a website outage is just an incident. Why would we talk about different ITSM practices? Well, when it comes to major incidents, it's not just one module as incident request in the play, but also multiple modules. For example, a website outage could mean that your customers are complaining that they're not able to go through with their payments, they're not able to track their products, they're not able to access their wish list, and so on. Simultaneously, your internal teams could also be complaining about different issues like uh, some of the dependent services are suddenly being blocked, and so on. So you have a wide variety of tickets being created, and you would need to track them all in one problem ticket so you can perform a root cause analysis. And once you figure out what's the issue, you would then need to create an emergency change request so you can deploy the fix right away. And in doing so, you might also rope in your projects and release module to ensure that the change is being deployed smoothly. So now you can understand how one major incident can involve multiple ITSM practices. And if manual work is involved in all of those, what could be the outcome? Well, Zilka had a number of weak spots mainly because of this manual intervention. So this means that when you don't have an automated tool in place, Zilka could suffer from things like delayed resolution due to improper classification of tickets. So when you have tickets coming in from multiple sources, you would want a way to make sure that they are classified accordingly and assigned to the relevant technicians. And being a festive season, it is expected that a lot of technicians might not be available. So this means that a lot of tickets are unattended because technicians are not present. So this could once again lead to inevitable delay. And the existing workforce, without having proper rules in place, they're not able to handle the huge influx of tickets, which once again leads to another weak spot in Zilka's process. And finally, Zilka is saying that they don't have proper regular maintenance activities performed. So this not only means that Zilka would have trouble uh, getting back online sooner, but there is also the risk that the website outage could happen again sooner or later. And then Zilker is looking at the fact that they're not able to provide real time updates to stakeholders. And just to keep their heads above the water, they decided to close the tickets erratically. So, overall, there was an inconsistent processing and governance of tickets. Now, enter ServiceDesk Plus. What could Zilker gain and turn things around using ServiceDesk Plus? The number one thing is that using ServiceDesk Plus, you can automate assignment of different parameters like category, priority, level, status, etc. on a request. This would result in swift resolution. And based on the incoming tickets parameters, you can also perform contextual actions like if the priority is high, let's do a field update. If the level is low, let's send a notification, and so on. And thirdly, you can ensure that the incoming tickets are being handled by the existing agents in an optimized manner, which means that you are able to use the existing resources effectively so that no tickets fall through cracks or go unattended. And fourthly, you can ensure that proper periodic health checkups are done on the website servers and so on, so that in future you can prevent unnecessary outages, while also, even if you have an outage, you will be able to retain your services back online quickly if you have a proper place where all the maintenances are logged perfectly. And then you can streamline communication and close tickets efficiently, and this would overall result in a standardized ITSM practice that agrees with the best ITIL practices. So let's go ahead and see how we can level up Zilka's performance using no-code automations or sometimes low-code automations in ServiceDesk Plus. Now, the first aspect I want to talk about is how you can classify tickets automatically and set specific deadlines. Now, Zilker needs a way to analyze all incoming tickets, judge their importance, and configure relevant deadlines. So, we'll go into the application and we'll see how this can be achieved. So, I am logging in as the administrator. Now, when it comes to automations, the automations are usually accessible only to the administrators, and the end users only get to see the automations applied on their request, but they cannot configure it. So, if you're an administrator, you're logging in, you're greeted with the home page. You can go to the admin tab, and you will have the automations present here. Now, we were talking about how Zilker needs a way to classify the priority assigned on a request. So we have priority matrix under help desk, where you have a literal matrix present with urgency as rows and impact as columns. Here you can assign the priority based on the impact and urgency values. Why is this necessary? Well, if you leave your end users to decide the priority of a request, they can just end up saying that all my requests are important because obviously they have to give priority to their own issues. But as a service desk agent, you would want a standardized way or a proper benchmark to measure what's the true priority of all requests and work on the ones that are really important right away. So this can be achieved through priority matrix. Here you can allow your end users to say what's the urgency and impact, and you can decide if the urgency is high and the impact is also high. Let's say that the priority is critical. But if the urgency is low and the impact is also low, then the priority is obviously low. And this is automatically saved. You can allow your end users and your technicians to override the priority matrix and update their own priority values, but we would not recommend this as per best practices of ITSM. Now, let's say an end user is logging in. How will the priority matrix be applied on their request? We'll go into an end user's login and see how this is achieved. So let's say as an end user, I am reporting an issue and I am selecting my template. The priority field is not visible because of certain field and form rules and we discussed about this in a previous episode. So we have the request type selected, and now the priority is not assigned, and the field is also not editable because we have prevented our technicians and requesters from editing priority values. So let's say I'm selecting the impact as low and my urgency is also quite low, in which case my priority is automatically updated as low. But if I were to change the impact value, my priority is being updated accordingly. So this is how priority matrix works. Now you have a way to understand what's the priority of a request. How would you assign deadlines based on this priority? For that, we have the feature called service level agreements, which is present under automations. Now, service level agreements are basically you agreeing to an end user saying, I will provide the resolution and or the service within the specific time. So, service level agreements are configured for incidents, services, and changes. For incidents, you can create a new SLA, but I'll take you to an existing one which is completely configured. So you can provide the SLA name and description, and incident SLAs are applied based on criteria, meaning if an incoming ticket matches the criteria you configure here, the SLA will be automatically applied. So you can set multiple criteria. Let's say if the priority is high and the category is, let's say, multiple categories. And if any one of these matches, I can apply it, or if I can choose this to say only if both the conditions are satisfied, the SLA should be applied. I'm going to remove this because I don't want to modify my existing configurations. And then we have the place where you can set up what is your response and resolution time, which is the integral part of service level agreements. So here is where you set your expected deadlines and you say, I will respond to this request within 1 hour and I will resolve it within 3 hours. So this way, yeah, the end users know when they can expect, and even the technicians are aware of which ticket is staying in the help list for too long and going stale. Now, let's take Zilker. They are having an issue of website outage. Now, Zilker cannot wait until its agents are back and and the festive season is over so that they can set up their e-commerce website, which does not make sense at all. So they would want to work through the weekends and holidays, and even if the working hours are complete, to put their services back online. So for this, you can enable the should be resolved or responded irrespective of operational hours website, and you can also choose to apply the SLA irrespective of holidays and weekends. Now, once you set this in place, you have your SLA's basic configurations. The next step is knowing what to do if the technician ends up violating the SLA. For example, let's say they didn't respond within the agreed upon time or they didn't resolve it at all. In which case, you can escalate the request to specific users or or to the ticket owner themselves. And you can choose to escalate it proactively or reactively to the SLA violation. For example, if the SLA is violated, you can say you can escalate it 1 hour before it violates or 1 hour after it violates. And during escalation, you can also choose to perform certain actions like reassigning the ticket to a different support group or technician, or you can update the ticket's priority and level. So this way you can set up to 4 escalation levels. And then we have operational level agreements. So this is something I would call as sub SLAs. And the difference is that while SLAs track the technician's working time, the OLAs track the time spent by the support groups. For Zilker, when there's a website outage, multiple support groups could be working on it. Or they could be the hardware team, they could be the network team, they could be the IT admin team, and so on. So while all of these groups are working in sync, if one group ends up spending too much time, then the entire SLA could be overshoot and the violation could be flagged unnecessarily. So you can avoid this by configuring OLA time for different support groups and saying this group should focus on this ticket only for this time. And if this particular group overshoots its time, the violation will be flagged only to them. So you can save the SLA and it will be applied. So we then have mail escalations here. Now, when you escalate an SLA, you can also choose to send emails to the user to whom the SLA is escalated. Now, this is enabled by default, and you can also disable it if needed, but we would recommend you leave it enabled. Now, this is incident requests. So let me take a short detour to show you how the SLAs appear when they apply to an incident request. So here you can see certain flags on the list view indicating that this SLA, this request has violated its SLA. So you can open the request, and in the details view under time analysis tab, you can see what's the response time, what's the resolution time, and how much the overdue has occurred. And you can also see the different amount of time spent by various groups and technicians on this request. So this is incident SLAs. When it comes to service SLAs, there is a slight uniqueness to service SLAs. So you can create, let me take you to an existing SLA. We have the SLA name and description, and you can configure the response and resolution time. You can set the escalation and the OLAs in place. But the difference here is you would notice that there is no criteria that needs to be configured here, because service SLAs are not applied by criteria, rather, they are applied based on the template that is being used. So if you have been with us in the previous masterclass, you would be aware of this. So in the service catalog, you have the service request templates. Let me take you to an existing template in place. And here under the workflow tab of each template, you can configure which SLA should be applicable for this service template. So let me dissociate this and reassociate it. So you can simply select the SLA. You can choose to show it to user groups or leave it untouched and save it. So now we have two SLAs assigned to this template. If an end user or a technician is trying to create a request, they can select which SLA they want to be applied. So let me go to my end user's login and try to create a request using that template. So here we have the option to select the SLAs. I can select and say if I want this service within 2 days or 5 days. And if I select it, then the SLA time is shown here. So this will set the right expectations with end users, and your service desk could avoid having unnecessary calls or follow ups after raising a service request. So the last SLA I want to focus about is change SLAs. Now, like incident and service, change SLA has its own uniqueness as well. So if you go to an existing SLA, you would see that we have the SLA name and description. You can apply it either within the operational hours or even outside operational hours, which is called calendar hours. And you can set the criteria based on which the change SLA is applied. So if the criteria is met, by a change request, the SLA will be applied automatically. But unlike incident and service SLAs, you do not have to define the resolution time for sure. You can either say no and say, let's not have a resolution time in place, or you can say yes and configure it, which is completely optional. And but the major part of change SLAs is you have escalations based on certain parameters. So you can say escalate before 2 days, or you can choose to escalate after a specific number of days. And while escalating, you can choose to escalate to specific change rules. So once you configure it, the SLA will be applied to the incoming change request automatically once the criteria is matched. So this is how SLAs work. Now let me go back into the presentation. And so we just saw how you can assign priority using priority matrix, how you can set up SLAs for incidents and service requests, and how you can configure actions like reassigning a request to different groups, technicians, or updating the priority and level. We then saw how you can allow your end users to choose their own SLA and uh, communicate with them what is their expected time of delivery. And finally, we saw how you can configure SLAs for change requests. The next hack I want to talk about is how you can trigger various actions when conditions are met in ServiceDesk Plus. So this will help you handle different ITSM practices effectively. So Zilker needs a way to systemize the ticket workflows. So you notice that how there's a huge influx and technicians are not sure how they should exactly proceed in this manner and so on. So what Zilker needs is a way to configure contextual actions based on the incoming request and also find a way to notify its stakeholders simultaneously. For this, we have two special features in service displays called business rules and custom triggers. So we'll first look into business rules, which is basically a set of rules that you define that make sure that all your incoming requests are in line with your business operations. For example, let's say your organization does not provide Mac laptops to your end users, but there's an end user using a default request template and saying, I want a Mac laptop. In which case, you can use a business rule to prevent the request from being created and notify your end user saying, we don't provide this service. So this is just one way of explaining business rules. So what you do is basically you funnel and you filter the incoming request. You make sure that the right values are being applied to the request. And if it's not in scope of your operations, you prevent the request. And you can this way you can monitor all your incoming requests automatically. So business rules are created for incident and service requests. You can group these rules into various rule groups. So you can create a new rule group easily with providing its name and description. And the rule groups are applied in a streamlined manner. So once a request comes into your service desk, the first rule is matched. And if you have a cascade operation in place, it goes ahead to the next rule or it skips the rules depending on what you've set. And this order can be defined using the organize button here. Here you can say which rule should be checked first and next and so on. So once you configure a rule group, you can add a rule to each rule group. So we already have a rule group in place that I would like you to for like that I would like to show you and explain. So here we have the rule group. You provide the name and description, and you can apply business rules either when a request is created, or if it's edited, or if it's deleted from the service disk. And you can choose to apply it within or outside the operational hours. And this is the cascade execution I was talking about. Here is where you decide if you want to apply the next rule after this rule is applied, or if you want to skip the remaining rules in that particular rule group, or skip the rest of the rule groups completely. And once you set this cascade, you can just go and define your criteria. So in the criteria, you say what criteria should be met for this business rule to be applied. And you can choose to apply it every time the criteria is met, or just the first time the criteria is met. And then you can set in your actions. So, or you can choose about process. So about process is what you say when you don't want your request to be created at all. Or you can use custom actions to update your fields. So let's say a user is creating a request of this template, but they don't have the request type configured, in which you can allow business rules to apply the right request type so that that request is classified properly. Simultaneously, you can also update other fields like technicians or support groups and so on. And other than this, you can also use custom functions to make calls to other modules in ServiceDesk Plus, or you can use scripts as well. Now, business rules are okay. I'm sorry. Now, this is how custom actions work. I want to take a moment to show you how the about operation works. So here we have the rules applied for about operation. Here I'm saying if a user is requesting a service when no agents are available and it's quite an important service request, then you can abort the process and tell your users to apply for it during the operational hours. Now, let's say you create a request. How will you notice the business rules applied to it? So let me take you to the request details page. So here we have the request present, and in the history you can see which business rule is applied. You can see the entries present here, and once the user creates a request, some business rules are applied automatically, and then the request is created. So the order plays a significance. The request was modified even before it was saved in the help desk. And similarly, once the user is updating, the request is modified and then updated into the system. So this is how business rules work. When you go to custom triggers, though, it is quite similar to business rule, but there is a major significance where custom triggers are applied to requests that are present in your service desk, not when just as they're being created or edited, but even if they are already present into the service desk. So you have trigger groups again, and in each trigger group, you can configure various triggers. So let's say we are opening this trigger, and you can set in your name and description, and you can apply the custom trigger when a request is created, when it's edited, deleted, or even if approval actions are performed on it, or if a reply is received for it. So if a approver approves the request, you can perform certain actions. If the requester replies to the request, you can perform more actions. And you can again choose to execute it within or outside operational hours. You can set the cascade execution, and you can set the criteria in place. And for custom triggers, you can configure notifications and webhooks or custom functions. Now, notifications will help you send contextual notifications. Say you can create a notification, you can perform, let's say I'm setting notification, you can send it either as an email or SMS. And you can say provide a subject and click save. And save, I'm sorry, let me select it, and provide someone to whom it should be sent, and save the template. So now we have notification. You can also choose custom functions to say if the criteria is matched, let's execute a custom function. Or you can use webhooks to place calls to third-party applications. Now, I'm not saving this, but rather I would take you to an existing request and show you how custom triggers are applied. So we have a request created here, and the status is marked as irrelevant. So therefore, the custom triggers are applied here, and it is shown that custom trigger is applied, and the rules is that uh, a certain resolution is being updated. So if you go to the resolution tab, you can see that the resolution was automatically logged, so which was configured in the custom function. So this is how custom triggers work. So we just saw how you can configure actions based on incoming request details. We saw how you can send contextual notifications using custom triggers. And let me take a short moment to explain this. While business rules are applicable only to incidents and service requests, custom triggers can be applied to change, projects, tasks, and requests as well. And the last thing we saw is how you can update fields like priority, technicians, or technician groups from either business rules or custom triggers. So the next hack I want to talk about is how you can assign technicians algorithmically and ensure their continuous availability. Now, Zilka had a problem wherein a lot of the technicians were unavailable due to the festive season. So Zilka needs a way to make sure that the existing workflow or the existing workforce has an idea of how they can manage even with the low number of agents in place. So for this, we have an important feature called Technician Auto Assign. As the name suggests, it's just a way in which technicians are automatically assigned to incoming requests. But you might be wondering, we just saw how you can assign technicians using SLAs, where you can say that if it's escalated, you give it to a different technician, or you can update technicians using business rules, using the field update option there, or using even custom triggers where you can use custom functions to update technicians. So why would we need a whole new feature for this? Well, the key difference being is that in SLAs, business rules, or custom triggers, the technician update that happens is contextual and based on certain rules. But when it comes to technician auto assign, here the assign model is based on an algorithm either called round robin or load balancing. So round robin would mean that all your incoming tickets are given to the technicians in a circular way, while load balancing is where ServiceDesk Plus measures the workload of different technicians and assigns the request to the technician whose workload is most low. So this is how technician auto assign is unique from the other automation rules. Now you can apply the tech auto assign either when a request is created or edited or both, and you can choose to apply it only to unassigned requests or to all requests. And especially when it comes to Zilkor, they were having trouble with low workforce. So in which case, you cannot assign a technician automatically to some agent uh, who's on leave. So you can prevent this by assigning requests only to online technicians. And you can also configure rules to include or exclude certain technicians from the auto assign feature. For example, I would not want my experienced staff to be handling uh, low priority requests that could be auto assigned to them through this feature. So, in which case, I can exclude them from being auto assigned requests. Similarly, I can also choose to exclude certain requests from being auto assigned. For example, any request of level 1 or of high priority, I can choose them from being not auto assigned because they might end up in the hands of a less experienced tech. So you can configure all of that in Technician Auto Assign. Now, we were talking how Zilkar had its low workforce, and so the administrator in Zilkar would need a way to track the availability of his technicians. So this can be performed from the Home tab. So in the Home tab, we have the scheduler subtab where you can see what's the availability for the logged in technician by default, but you can as an administrator choose to view the availability of other technicians by selecting them. So here we can see that this particular tech is unavailable on one day, and you can configure a backup technician. So they have a backup technician in place, which is why this form is popping up. And for yourself as well, for as a login user, you can configure backup technicians on days where you're not available. And if you have a backup technician configured, you can view the backup technician chart to see the different backup technicians. So if a particular user is unavailable, who is the backup technician? Now, in some cases, you do not want a backup technician, in which case you can either move the request to unassigned state or you can just ignore and leave it untouched. Now, the next thing is we have the tech availability chart. So while the scheduler gives you an idea of the availability of different users, I was just explaining how you can view the schedule for different technicians in the scheduler tab, while you can use the tech availability chart to get an overview of the schedule of all technicians in your organization. So then we have the backup approval chart. So when the two most important delays that happens when a technician goes on leave is either the requests are unattended or the approvals are unattended. So when a request is unattended, you can use the backup tech chart to delegate the request to other users. Similarly, you can use the backup approvals feature to delegate your approvals to other users temporarily. So here we have an approval configured already. I've said if I'm unavailable, we'll have another user as the backup approver for a specific date. And I've said this is just a temporary arrangement in my comments. You can configure new approvals as well. You can select certain users, select another user as the backup approver, specify the date on which they should be the backup approvers, and click save. Okay, let me configure the right date and save. Okay. So let me just refresh my page and it should reappear. Yes. So you can see that the backup approval is configured. So this way I can make sure that none of my approvals or my vital requests are left unattended or they are unnoticed. So we just saw how you can how you can assign technicians based on algorithms, how you can track your technicians' availability, and how you can designate tickets and approvals in the absence of users. The next hack I want to talk about is how you can sustain a healthy IT landscape by scheduling periodic maintenance operations. Now, Zilker needs a way to make sure that should the website outage reoccur, they should be prepared for that scenario. And they also need to make sure that if the outage happens, they can be restored back online because that is achieved only if there are proper maintenance activities performed on their servers and operating systems. So for this, we have a unique feature called preventive maintenance task, which is present under the admin tab. Now, preventive maintenance task or PM task, as we refer to it internally, is a way in which requests are generated automatically with predefined data, and they are also assigned to the relevant user so that at the right amount of time, or say periodically, the user or the technician is reminded to perform a certain task. So you can create a PM task using templates. So you can say select a template. We have either the incident or service templates. For example, if you want to request a CRM account once every month, you can use this template. Or if you want to remind the users for an incident, you can use this template. Or you can simply use the default request template and provide in the relevant information. You can say who would be the requester, what would be the impact of this maintenance task, what is the urgency of this task, and the priority will be auto updated based on the priority matrix we just saw. You can specify further details and click next. Now let me take you to an existing task in place. So here we have a task with all its details configured. Once you click save, you can go to the task schedule and say what is the periodicity of this PM task, or rather in simple terms, how often would you want this task to be generated. Now in Zilker I have configured that every month on the 5th we are going to generate a request at 9 a.m. You can also do a periodic schedule to say random days like 13 days, once every 13 days, or you can do a weekly schedule or just a one time schedule and so on. So once you create this, you can click save and the task will be set in place. Now, a request won't be generated right away. You can use this button here to create a new request, or when the configured date reaches the next time around, the request will be generated automatically. So, if you go into the request details page, you would notice that there are some requests created with the subject and the details we just applied. and if there are priority matrix or if there is an SLA or a technician auto assign feature that matches with this request, all of those automations will be applied to this request automatically. So this way I can, instead of manually creating a task every time, I can configure a schedule and the task will be created and assigned to the request automatically in the set time. So we just saw how you can create maintenance tasks, specify details, and schedule the task periodically based on the organizational needs. The next step I want to talk about is how you can keep your stakeholders posted and resolve ITSM processes effectively. Now, Zilka needs a way to send notifications to stakeholders when various actions are performed, and it also needs a way to collect right details and close requests effectively. Now, you might be wondering, we just saw about how notification actions can be performed earlier in SLAs where you can send mail based escalations as notifications. We then saw how you can send notifications using custom triggers as well. Now, what is the difference of having a whole new feature called notification rules for this purpose? So, we have notification rules here. So the key difference is that when it comes to other automation rules, they are again contextual or rule based. So when a criteria is met, the notification is sent. Here, the notifications are sent when certain key events happen in the request. So when a requester replies to an email, or if an editor performs an operation, or if the technician updates the request or moves it to a different status. You can configure notifications for all of that simply by enabling the checkbox here. And once you've enabled it, you can customize the message that is being sent and add dollar variables to insert contextual content as well. And we saw earlier how you can send mail based notifications when SLAs are violated. You can configure those content as well at the end of the screen. You can see the SLA escalation email is here. The first response escalation email is here. You can customize the template here and provide the details necessary. Now, if you want notifications to be sent only to technicians, we also have that as technician notifications. You can choose the technicians to whom the notification must be sent. Now, notifications are there for almost all modules from request, task, problem, change, all the way until mobile app and approval as well. So these notifications all indicate various key events happening in a particular request or asset or contract and so on. The next feature I want to talk about is closure rules, which is vital in helping Zilker maintain their close status effectively. So when a lot of requests are coming in, technicians might end up logging in certain information before they close a request. So you can prevent that by by mandating certain fields, or by asking your users to confirm user acknowledgement and so on. You can also set automated close in place by saying if all tasks are completed, let's move the request to close status. Or if the request reaches resolve status, after a specified number of days, you can close a request. This is very important because a lot of times technicians resolve the request, but they don't move it to close status, in which case they might end up accidentally violating the SLA. So you can configure automated close to avoid this. You can also choose to close the request automatically if approval is denied and so on. This is not present only for request. Again, we have closure rules for problems, change, release, and tasks as well. So this will help Zilker send notifications and ensure that requests are being closed effectively. So we saw how you can communicate with the stakeholders during key events and send contextual and customized notifications. We then saw how you can mandate fields and automatically close requests. And the next feature I want to talk about is visually tracking and standardizing the entire life cycle of various ITSM practices. Now, Zilka has very inconsistent governance of tickets. So, with ServiceDesk Plus, Zilka can design their entire ITSM experience using graphical workflows. For this, we have two key features called request lifecycle and workflows. Now, request lifecycle is applicable only to request module. So here you can configure lifecycle and say how should the request move through various statuses. So all these white boxes you see here, like open or assigned, are statuses, and these green boxes are transitions. Now, when a request starts and it moves to open status, what is the transition present, and or what should be what are the fields that should be mandated, what are the actions that should be performed, and so on. For example, let's say a request is created, it's an open status, now the request could either move to assigned or it can move on hold. So if it is moving to assigned status, during the transition, you can say in the before tab, you can configure um, which roles can even view this transition so that the request can go to the next state. And if you want, you can configure certain rules, or during the transition you can mandate certain actions. So if the technician is trying to move from open to assign, then certain fields will be mandated and certain actions can be performed, like like custom functions, field updates, and so on. And after the transition is done and the request is updated with assigned status, you can perform further actions like sending notifications, executing custom functions, webhooks, or scripts. So this is how lifecycle looks and is configured. Now, this will help you set guidelines in place and on how requests should be handled. So even your newest technicians or your less experienced agents, even they will be able to handle tickets because lifecycle will help them literally document how they can proceed further. Let me take a moment and show you how it is done. So in the request tab, let me open a lifecycle, a request with lifecycle in place. So here you can see the request is in open state and there are two transitions present. So I can either move the request on hold or on assign. And if I'm to select assign, then the request moves to assign state and the next transition is starting the work, which means if I click this transition, um, my request status will be in progress. So if I select it, my status is assigned updated automatically. And now I can either resolve the request once my work is done, or I can put it on hold until I get some information. So this way, instead of moving my request to a number of status in no particular order, I can correctly update the work done on the request in each state. Now this is for request module. When it comes to change requests or release a request, we have workflows in place. Now, workflows can, or again, they are what to change requests as lifecycle is what to incident requests. So we have a number of stages present. Let me just remove the stage, and let's say I want to add a stage. I can simply drag and drop the node, and the stage is obviously planning. And let me configure the statuses and save it. So now I can connect the stage and two different stages. And before I do that, let's say I want to make sure a certain condition is met. So I can say, and let me just say that I want the change type is standard and save it. So now when the change request is created and it's in requested status, the technician moves it to accepted. Now the application checks the condition, and like I said, we said the condition must be change type is standard. So if the condition is satisfied, it moves forward to plan to requesting for information. If no, we go back and we reject it until the status is updated and the condition is satisfied. The request will not move forward. Now, this condition node helps you in deciding yes or no answers. If you have more than two answers, you can use the switch node and say if the category is general or internet or hardware, in which case you can say once the request is accepted, if it's general, you can move to planning in progress. If it's internet, you want more information, or if it's hardware, you can simply skip the entire stage and move to the next stage. So this will help you branch out your existing workflow in multiple ways, and also like instead of having yes or no conditions, you can apply multiple conditions. And then we have notification node, wherein you can simply send notifications to specific change roles and so on. So let's say it's accepted notifications, and then we have the field. You can also configure approvals as I have configured here. Again, approvals are sent to various change roles, and you can configure field updates as well. So even if a request has a field update as impact is low, you can still enforce it and say the impact must be high for this change and connect it. So now you can say it's approved, and if it's approved, we go to the next. Now we have a linear workflow in place. You can save it. So once a change comes in to the service disk, the depending on the template used, the workflow will be updated. So this is how change workflows look. Now you might have noticed that we are not going way too in depth with lifecycle and workflows. This is because we have a whole new masterclass dedicated for lifecycles and workflows coming for us in the next month. So stay tuned for that. So overall, we saw how you can build transitions between statuses, how you can configure various custom actions, how you can design workflows and automate approvals, notifications, and field updates. The last hack I want to talk about is Zia. Now, Zia is our own AI assistant that helps you automate actions and predict parameters. Now, Zilker needs to leverage Zia in order to run his service desk efficiently. We'll go ahead and see how. So Zia is one of my favorite features, and it's present right at the bottom. So Zia is, you can configure Zia's artificial intelligence in Zia configurations. So this works in two ways. Number one, when a request is created, you can update or you can use Zia to suggest the right category or template for that request. Or let's say the uh, let's say the requester or the approver is replying to a request via email, in which case Zia can parse through the content of the mail, understand what the requester is saying, and perform certain actions based on it. For example, let's say a request is closed, and you have sent a notification rule to your end user saying the request is now closed. But your end users are saying, no, my resolution is not working, I need more information. In which case, Zia can understand what the requester is saying and reopen the request based on their response. Let's just test Zia for a moment. So I'm saying, um, not good, I need more info. And I'm testing, and Zia is predicting the request should be reopened. Or I'm simply giving a nominal response and saying, thank you for your help. Now Zia is predicting that the request should remain closed. Now you can add in your standard replies here, and Zia's actions will be applied automatically. Similarly, when it comes for approval actions, a lot of times approvers receive the approval email and they respond to the email rather than opening the application and recording the decision. So in which case you can use Zia to understand the approver's response and perform the approval or reject action. So let's say I'm providing the action here and saying um, budget is too high. And let's say Zia, and Zia is predicting the request is being rejected right now. Or let's say I'm saying go ahead. And Zia is predicting the approval is complete. So again, you can add in your standard responses here, and Zia will be able to apply the actions accurately. And as I was saying earlier, you can also use Zia to assign or suggest templates. Now, this is applicable only when Zia is trained properly. And to train Zia, you have a number of checks in place. Number one, the application must be in English. Number two, you must have a minimum of 500 requests in your service desk to even train Zia. And all these requests must have proper information. So you need at least 500 requests with proper category assigned. Based on that, Zia will understand how to suggest categories for upcoming requests. And the same goes for templates. And this is applicable only, template prediction is applicable only for default templates, not if a specific template is selected by the user. So let's say I want to create a request. So I'm creating a request, and I am using the default request template. Let me select an end user in place and provide this saying application is crashing frequently. And let's try to add the request. Now Zia read through my content and predicted that for requests using this subject, the category is usually printers and the template should be this template. So I can select the details and apply, and the template and the value will be applied automatically. You can see the category is printers and the template is applied. So this is how Zia's prediction works. Now this is how Zia's AI prediction works. When it comes to Zia bot, it has a totally different uh, functionality where you can perform quick actions using the conversational bot of Zia. So we have a number of built-in slash commands here. So you can open the Zia bot and simply perform an action. Let's say you want to assign a request. Simply say slash assign request and they ask me for the request ID. You can say 2660. You can choose who you wanted to assign it and it's complete. So if you go to this request, you would see the user is assigned automatically. So we'll go back and we'll see if it's done. And you can see 2660 is here and the user is Jennifer Doe, just like we updated. And similarly, you can also raise ticket. You can raise a service request by selecting the relevant template and providing the details. Or you can say you want more assistance and go through the solutions, announcements, existing requests, your pending approvals, and so on. You also can execute an operation using like updating technicians to a request. You can update tasks, you can add notes, and so on. So, or like I said, you can use the slash commands to perform the actions quickly. So this is how Zia works. So we just saw how you can execute quick actions using slash commands, or how you can use Zia to predict data automatically. So to give a quick recap of everything we discussed, we saw how you can classify tickets automatically using priority matrix and how you can set specific deadlines using ServiceDesk Plus. We then discussed on triggering various actions when conditions are met using business rules and custom triggers. We then saw how you can assign technicians algorithmically either using round robin or load balancing model, and how you can track your technicians availability using tech availability chart and the scheduler tab. We then discussed how you can maintain a healthy IT landscape by scheduling periodic maintenance tasks. And we looked into keeping your stakeholders posted and resolving ITSM processes using notification rules and closure rules. We then saw how you can visually track your entire lifecycle using request lifecycle and workflows. And we finally looked into automating actions and predicting parameters using Zia. Before we close, I want to share a few more resources with you. So we have the admin guide, which will document how all of these automations work in detail and how they work in sync with one another. We have release notes, which notify you of our latest release. So we just had our 14,000 release today. So you can use the release notes to see what are the latest features and how they work and so on. We have a huge repository of product videos on our YouTube channel, so you can check it out anytime. We have a community portal where you can contact your peers and discuss about ServiceDesk Plus. We have a support portal where you can contact a support team in case you need help with anything. And finally, we have hello at servicedeskplus.com. The email is always open to you to share your questions and your feedback. So, thank you very much for being such an amazing audience. And until the next season, it's a bye bye from Steffi.